So, have you ever had one of those days where your computer just refuses to cooperate? It shuts down for no reason, gets stuck in a loop, or maybe it just plays dead. Well, before you start blaming your RAM or your motherboard, there's a really critical component you need to check first. Okay, let's dive into how you can safely and very easily test your PC's power supply.
Right. When a PC starts acting up, the power supply unit, or PSU, is so often the unsung villain in the story. It's basically the heart of your machine, right? It's pumping life into every single component, and when it starts to fail, the symptoms can be just bizarre and so frustratingly inconsistent.
So, how do you actually know if the PSU is the real source of your PC's weird behavior? That's the big question. But thankfully, you don't need to be a detective to solve this mystery. The clues? They're often hiding in plain sight, just disguised as really common computer glitches.
Does any of this look familiar? Random shutdowns right in the middle of a game, or maybe unexplained restarts while you're trying to get work done. How about getting stuck in that endless, infuriating boot loop? Or, the most obvious one, you hit the power button and get absolutely nothing. If you're nodding your head right now, you are definitely in the right place.
Now you could grab a multimeter and spend your entire afternoon painstakingly testing dozens of tiny little pins, or you could just use the right tool for the job. So let me introduce you to the hero of our story today, the PSU tester.
What is this thing? Well, think of it like a translator. It's a super simple plug-and-play device that speaks the language of your power supply and then tells you, in no uncertain terms, whether it's healthy or if it's on its last legs.
And this is where it gets really interesting when you compare the two. Just look at the difference. A PSU tester is truly plug-and-play. You get instant, often audible feedback. It easily tests those tricky SATA connectors, and this is the absolute key, it can measure something called the power good value, which is something a multimeter just plain can't do. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. The consensus is crystal clear. For how inexpensive and straightforward these testers are, they are an absolutely essential tool for any PC builder or troubleshooter. And honestly, they pretty much all come from the same factories, so any generic one you find online will do the job perfectly.
All right, you've got your tester. Let's actually walk through the process. It's incredibly simple, but we've got to do it correctly, and most importantly, we have to do it safely.
And this brings us to our most important slide. I really need to be crystal clear here. We are testing the cables that come from the power supply. Never, ever, ever open the metal box of the PSU itself. Even when it's unplugged, it can hold a lethal electrical charge. Seriously, stay safe and stay outside the box. Okay, the process itself is just 4 simple steps. First, kill the power. Either flick the switch on the PSU or just unplug it from the wall. Second, disconnect all of its cables from your computer parts. Your motherboard, your graphics card, all of it. This protects your components. Third, plug the big 24-pin motherboard cable and the CPU power cable right into the tester. And finally, turn the PSU back on. The tester will immediately spring to life.
So, the moment you power it on, the screen is going to light up with all these numbers and values. Now, it might look a little technical at first glance, but I promise it's actually really easy to understand what it's telling you. So the tester is checking the main voltage rails. You'll see values like plus 12V, plus 5V, and so on. Now, these numbers don't have to be exact. A reading of, say, 11.8 volts on the 12-volt rail, that's perfectly fine. There's an acceptable tolerance of about plus or minus 5%. And here's the best part. If a voltage is dangerously out of range, the tester will start beeping at you, loudly. No math required.
And now for that special value we mentioned earlier, the power good, or PG value. This number, it's measured in milliseconds, and it is critical. Think of it like a starting gun at a race. It's the signal the PSU sends to all of your components that says, okay, the power is stable, you're good to go. And here is the magic number. That starting gun has to fire within 100 to 500 milliseconds. If it's too slow, let's say it's over 500 ms, your components might not power on in the right sequence, and that is a classic cause of those super frustrating boot loops.
But don't forget the other cables. After you test the main connectors, you can plug in the cables for your hard drives and graphics card, your SATA, Molex, and PCIe cables, and test them too. Just remember the golden rule here. Test these secondary cables one at a time. If you plug in more than one, it'll just confuse the tester's little LED lights and give you an inaccurate reading.
So, you've run the tests, you've seen the numbers, now it's time for the final verdict. What does it all mean, and what do you do next?
Look, the takeaway here is simple and direct. If any of those main voltage readings were way out of line, or if that all-important PG value was higher than 500 milliseconds, The verdict is in. Your power supply is failing, and it is time to replace it.
But what if everything passes the test? What if the voltages are stable and that PG value is perfect? Well, first off, that's great news. It means your PC's power source is solid. But it also means your troubleshooting journey isn't over. The question now becomes, what's the next component on your list to check?